Hey guys, my name is Cynthia, and I'm the best babysitter in my town. I know it's not much to say, but I'm really proud. I love children, and I'm finishing my studies to become a kindergarten teacher. As I am in my last year, I was considering quitting babysitting and dedicating myself completely to studying, but on the weekends I wanted to continue working to help my parents. It was in one of these weekends jobs that I had the worst experience of my life. The experience that made me stop being a babysitter or going into other people's houses for years. It all started when I got a call from some new clients. They were an elderly couple who had to take care of their grandson, a little boy who had lost his parents. The grandparents had no problem taking care of them, but for once they wanted to take a break to watch a movie at home. The job seemed easy, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity to help the grandparents, so I headed to their house the next day without hesitation. When I arrived, I was shocked. The house was huge. It looked like a mansion. The grandparents treated me very well, but there was something that caught my attention. They kept looking at me. Their eyes were frozen on me, but one of the things that accentuated their terrifying looks was that they were always smiling. But not like grandparents would smile. They had an ear-to-ear grin that exposed their teeth, which looked surprisingly well groomed and sharp. When I entered the boys' room, the nightmare began. The grandparents locked the door, and the child... That was no child. It was a huge overweight adult wearing a diaper and a rattle. "Are you my new toy?" His words went through my whole body in the form of a painful shiver. My first reaction was to try to escape, to bang on the door as hard as I could, but no one was coming for me. This was a trap. "Do you want to have a tea party?" I decided to play along. This man didn't look like a psycho or inherently evil. He looked like an adult with a mental problem. Very tasty." "Are you kidding me? You're not eating, you're just pretending." "No, I'm eating. Before I could finish, the man jumped at me with the piece of plastic cake and tried to put it in my mouth. "Swallow, swallow, swallow." At that moment, I thought my life was over. The man was sticking his fingers down my throat, forcing me to swallow the plastic, but it wouldn't go in. Meanwhile, I was choking. I could no longer breathe. In panic, I managed to kick him, and in desperation, I jumped out of the window regardless of the fact that it was a second floor. When I fell to the ground, I realized that I had broken my arm, but I stood up anyway to keep running. The door of the old people's house opened, and angrily the grandmother ran out with a knife. We both ran, but even though it was just a lady, she was catching up with me. The fall also hurt my foot, which was hurting more and more. When the lady was behind me, ready to attack me, a hand stopped her. They were my neighbors. All of them had gathered to defend me, and all of them knew me as their children's babysitter. They all loved me as their own daughter, and that day, they saved my life. Soon after, I saw on TV how they arrested the old couple. They were two dangerous fugitives, and the man in diapers was a child who had been kidnapped as a child and raised to kill babysitters just for the amusement of the elderly. Fortunately, he is now in better hands, in a center where he can be cared for. From time to time I go to visit him. Nowadays he considers me as his big sister. As for the elderly, they are in prison, and because of their age, they will never get out. They will never again be able to force an innocent person to murder babysitters like me just for fun. How much do you believe in urban legends? I was never a very believing person, or I wasn't until that day. The day that something forced me to put all my beliefs into play and see that there is something else that we don't see. That day I had to take care of my neighbor's children, and although they were very problematic, I had already taken care of them many times, and they had known me all my life, so I was basically the only person who could control them. Still, it didn't stop them from misbehaving, but that day they promised to be quiet in exchange for trying out a toy they found in their parents' closet, an Ouija board. When the time came, we followed all the rules, lit the candles, and turned off all the lights. The game began. I knew this was very irresponsible. The kids were no older than 12 years old, but if they didn't do it with me, they would do it on their own, and I must admit that I was a little excited too. We started the game, and as I expected, nothing was happening. We asked simple questions, to which the board did not respond. The kids started to get bored until, to motivate them, I moved my hand to play a joke on them. I moved my fingers from one place to another to answer the questions. They were excited, but from 1 second to the next, everything took a darker turn. I suggested to the children to say goodbye to the ghost to end the game. But when my fingers moved to the goodbye part of the board, they moved to the no part instead. Suddenly my hand kept moving, but this time I wasn't controlling it. All the letters formed insults and threats. I got mad at the kids for moving the board like that, but when I saw them, they were crying in terror. This was no joke. Besides, it wasn't the board that was moving, it was my hand. A rule says we can't leave the game without saying goodbye to the ghost, so we had no choice but to keep playing. Angrily but scared, I demanded the ghost to let us go. At first, the board did not move, but within seconds it responded differently. The house was freezing and the candle fires had grown, but all around us the darkness was more noticeable than before, as if there was a black hole surrounded by beings that wanted to harm us. The children were terrified. They were still playing, not because they didn't want to break the rules, but because fear had paralyzed them. Suddenly, a lit candle flew in my direction. I could barely dodge it, and when it hit the floor, about 2 meters away from us, it illuminated the face of a horrifying being that was staring at us. Immediately after, the candle went out, and so did all the candles we had near us. In total darkness, we began to hear footsteps near us. Something stood behind me and began to breathe on the back of my neck, closer and closer, and closer and closer. At our worst moment, a flash of light invaded the house and the lights came on. It was the parents of the children who, as soon as they came in and saw what happening, kicked the Ouija table and pushed the 2 children away from the room. Shortly after, the children fell asleep. They told me what was happening. The Ouija board had not attracted any ghosts in the house. Those ghosts were already there. They bought the Ouija board so they could contact them and ask them to leave, but they didn't succeed. Those kids suffer paranormal events every day, and that's why they were so curious to play, to solve the problem for us. I never entered that house again. That night had marked the end of my days as a babysitter. Who knows what is to be found in every house I go to visit, and who knows if it may not follow me. You could say that I have a very fearless family. When we sit down to eat, everyone tells very risky anecdotes where their lives were in danger. But between a policeman father, a firefighter mother, and a former soldier uncle, would you believe me if I told you the most terrifying anecdote occurred to me as a babysitter? The day it all happened, I was babysitting Andy, a regular kid who may have had a bit of a big imagination, but he was still a good kid. The parents asked me to come to their house to take care of him. Since I was trustworthy and lived only a few blocks away, I knew where the keys were hidden. So when I went in, I met Andy, and what I saw shocked me. The house was a terrible mess. Things were strewn everywhere. The walls were dirty and the curtains were down. In the middle of the dining room, Andy was surprised to see me and immediately started yelling at me. "Rose, I swear it wasn't me. It was Bobby. You waited for Mom and Dad to leave to do this." "Oh, Andy, you don't make it easy for me." I spent hours cleaning up. While I was doing it, the little boy would come and bring me things all the time, trying to help me. I couldn't blame him. He was just a kid, and he was sorry, even if he wouldn't admit it. I finished cleaning up and headed for the kitchen. It was the time to make Andy's lunch. But when I got there, I dropped my bucket in surprise. It was all smashed. How had this kid managed to break everything in such a short time? Why had he done it? "Andy, what the hell?" "Oh no, Bobby, not again. Rose, I swear it's him. He told me not to tell you or else you tell him off, but I think he deserves it." "You can't keep blaming your imaginary friend, Andy. You have to take responsibility for the things you do. It's no good you help me if you then..." "What was that?" "Oh God, Bobby, no!" Andy ran to the dining room, but I stopped him in his tracks and told him to go to his room and lock himself in. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and slowly made my way to the dining room. When I arrived, the curtain was falling again as someone was drawing it. It was a huge man dressed as a sailor. His face was sickeningly evil, his eyes staring at me with a dark, cruel smile. This was Bobby. "Oh, did Andy tell on me? I'll have to go and punish him." "Who the hell are you?" "Get away from us. Get away or I'll call the police." "Hey, you don't have to get mad like that. I'm just a friend of Andy's. Rose." Desperately, I ran for the stairs, but the psycho quickly caught up to me and grabbed me by the hair and threw me down the stairs. Instead of attacking me on the floor, the man saw me with a creepy grin and headed for Andy's room, showing me the knife I had dropped as I fell. "Andy, open the door or I'll be very angry." From the floor, I could only hear the psychopath pounding Andy's door harder and harder. Behind the door, I could hear Andy crying. I crawled down the stairs to stop him, but halfway down, I felt the boy's door explode and his screams became louder than ever. With a lot of effort, I managed to stand up and run up there, and when I got there, Andy was in the corner crying. Alone. "What? Where's Bobby?" As if to answer my question, the man came out from behind the broken door, and with one hand choked me and lifted me up against the wall. "Rose, Andy doesn't need a babysitter. He has me." My vision was starting to blur, and I no longer had the strength to fight. But suddenly Andy hit the psycho with his candlestick, and the psycho in pain let go of me. "Oh, naughty boy, you shouldn't have done that." The man walked intimidatingly in Andy's direction, but before he got there, I gathered all my strength and rammed him. We both fell out of the second-floor window, but unlike the man, some bushes covered my blow. The neighbors piled in, and the police soon arrived. The man died on the way to the hospital. Although it was a very short fall, he hit his head on a rock and did not survive. Soon after, this man was all over the news. Apparently, he was the culprit in the kidnapping and disappearance of more than 10 children. He enjoyed tricking and befriending them before killing them. Andy's family thanked me profusely, and today I still take care of him, although less so. The parents avoid going out too much without him. Who knows when the next Bobby might set eyes on their son. Thank you for listening to our story. We hope it gave you a good scare. If you like it, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more spooky stories.